After a huge debut weekend, the sports world is buzzing about the XFL, and this week should be even better when Tampa Bay takes on Seattle tomorrow at 5 Eastern on Fox and the Fox Sports app. And don't forget, before the XFL games kick off this weekend, make sure you download the Fox Sports Super 6 app and play for free for a chance to win up to $10,000.
Yeah. It's fun. Rashad Jennings is fascinating. You played NFL running back. You're a best-selling author in New York Times. You have a child book series we'll talk about. You're a Dancing with the Stars champion. And you go to Liberty and make the NFL. Did you watch any of the XFL last weekend?
I watched a bit of it.
Yeah.
I watched a bit of it.
Yeah. Running back, wide receiver is the strength of the league. O-line is the weakness.
Yeah. The skill set, you can find one or two guys that probably could play at the next level, but the offensive line shows itself.
Listen, there are not a lot of good O-lines in the NFL. So you're not going to have 8 good offensive lines in the XFL.
Yeah.
So we'll get to your book in a second. I want to talk about something, the Joe Burrow trade. So John Elway had a football coaching dad. So did Eli Manning. Mm-hmm. Their dads came in and said, my sons are not playing for your dysfunctional organization. Joe Burrow's dad is an accomplished coach, not as well known perhaps as a Jack Elway or an Archie Manning. But I've always said once a player in the NFL signs a quarterback out of college, he's trapped for 7 years. You're trapped. They can franchise tag you. I'm Joe Burrow. This is an 84-year-old owner who also covets the GM job with the smallest scouting department in the league. I would get if Joe Burrow and his dad said, no, we're not coming here. You haven't proved, and you can say to yourself, that's unfair. No, it's not. You can go get your quarterbacks in other rounds. Number one guy in certain years won't play for you. Is that an outrageous thought? Do players talk about that?
Yeah, I think it's not an outrageous thought. It's two sides to the coin on this one. I mean, if you take a guy, and one, you need the buffer to be able to fight for you, not Joe.
Let dad be the villain.
Yeah, because the issue you come into play with, let's say it doesn't pan out. Let's say if him and his camp starts to bark that they want elsewhere, and it doesn't pan out, and he gets drafted to the Bengals. Now you have this aura about him in the locker room, and as soon as they go out there, any incompletion, people are going to be saying, oh, so you didn't want to be here. If you lose a game, oh, so you didn't want to be here. So it messes up the trajectory of his whole career and this stigma about him early. So if you're going to swing the bat, you got to make sure you hit, or else it's going to look ugly.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it.
But I get it. I totally get it. Now, if you're going to do it, if you want out, I mean, this is a prime time to do it, especially when you've had some other quarterbacks say that organization isn't about winning first.
And I do believe the Chargers have a bunch of picks and players, Carolina, Indianapolis. You have multiple teams that would go to Cincinnati. I read a story yesterday. Carolina's like, here's Christian McCaffrey, our number one pick, 2 seconds. Well, you know, it's not crazy for Cincinnati to go, okay, we're going to keep Dalton for one more year. We'll draft a quarterback later in the second round. It's not the craziest thing, but I think you put it best. If you're going to do it, you better get a base knock. If you're going to swing the bat, you better get a base knock.
You better get on first base.
That's right. It's tough to navigate. So we have situations. I want to go to Carolina. Carolina's got a new owner and a new coach. And I've said this. When Tim Tebow got replaced in Denver, Tebow was so popular, he was iconic, they had to bring in Peyton Manning. When you bring in Peyton, people say, okay, I'm over Tim. If you had brought in a journeyman veteran, they wouldn't have had the force that to overcome the love for Tebow. Cam is very polarizing, but the people who love him in Carolina are all in. They're all in on his fashion, the personality. Like, if I'm the owner of Carolina, I better get the number one pick or bring in a real player. Because I think if you replace Cam, if you don't have an idea what you're doing, if you limp into that, it could be really ugly in that locker room. What would you do if you're the new owner in Carolina or the new coach?
See, if I'm the owner, it's different from if I was a coach versus a player.
Okay,
I got all three different type of attitudes.
What would you do?
If I'm the owner, I'm gambling a little bit here. If I'm the owner, Cam still could play football. He's a great player. I think he still has a lot of value in the league, and I'm going to trade him.
Okay.
I'm going to get my money worth, allow him to go. I would be open for Christian McCaffrey for a trade or some type if there's a strong value there. And what I would do with that money is I would stack my offensive line, I would stack my defensive line, build my team inside and out. I will go into the next season and compete very hard. Evaluate everybody, coaches and everybody. This is my first year as an owner, so I'm not going to get shiced. Whatever happens, I'm going to need time to build this out. Now, odds are, if you let go of McCaffrey and if you don't bring Cam in,
it's a pretty anemic offense.
Yes, and then you go into that season not playing the best, but then guess who you get as your first-round draft pick the following year?
Okay, so that's what you see. I don't think you're wrong on
Trevor Lawrence, but that's if I'm the owner.
Now you're the coach.
If I'm the coach, I need to win now. I ain't got time for that. I need Christian on my team, and if I'm going to let go of Cam, who are we bringing in? I do need somebody. Now I'm not going to worry as much with my offensive defensive line. I'm going to build up so a lot of skilled players and draft with my offensive line and compete. But no, I'm not letting go of McCaffrey for nothing. I'm the head coach.
This is why, by the way, I've had GMs tell me this. Coaches coach, GMs do it differently. Coaches want to win games. Coaches name. Matt Rule off to an 0-7 start. The owner's like, what do I care? I'm going to get a quote. But for coaches, that's very personal. Yeah. Coaches want to win on Sunday. Yeah. So you may have a 7-year contract. Kyle Shanahan was having no fun going 4-20 without Jimmy Garoppolo because everybody's saying, well, he's young. Maybe Shanahan's not a head coach. He's a coordinator. Right. Matt Rule goes 0-7 without Cam. Everybody's like, he's a Baylor guy. He's not an NFL guy, even though he could be a very good coach. Let's shift to Brady. There's a lot out there. You played in this league. What do you think is really happening right now inside the walls in Foxborough?
Yeah, that's a good one. So Brady, obviously, he's always going to be arguably the best quarterback to ever play the game. So what's interesting about this one is there's no surprise for a lot of people in that organization. If you let your franchise, not just a franchise quarterback, but a GOAT, get to the point of March 11th, and you haven't signed him, it's very telling that you are not going to sign him because he has a good relationship with Belichick and the Kraft family. Right. So I know goodness well he's had a conversation with them off the record about what's going to happen or what should happen or wants. Brady's taking so many sacrifices over there, taking pay cuts so he could build out the team. He's put team first. He's won Super Bowls for you. He's done everything he could. So I know you have a great relationship in behind the walls. Now he's going to the media. He's not going to air out any of those. But
you believe they've had conversations. He hasn't re-signed.
Hasn't. And I think one of those conversations ticked him off. I think there's some friction between those three individuals collectively. And Brady wants out, and he said, "Listen, now it's about money. If you should have paid me a long time ago." And been the highest paid quarterback in the league at some point in his career. Now I'm gonna make it about money. But Brady's not. He's also, this is totally a push. But Brady's never been on social media his whole entire career.
Why is he now?
Exactly. I think because of the TB12 brand. I think he knows
the end is near.
Yes, and so he's trying to build out some of his business accolades, which I think is brilliant and amazing, and I applaud him for that. But then again, if I'm looking at it as an owner, a coach, or a player, I got three different attitudes of how I'm watching this. If I'm the owner, I'm like, okay, he's beginning to show more focus elsewhere.
Right.
In the latter years of his career, which typically you start tanking, but you can't. He's an anomaly, so you can't compare him to anybody else, which is difficult. And I think that's where they're at. I think they're going to wash their hands. I think we'll see him in another uniform, and I can't wait. I think it's going to be great soap opera for next year.
His buddy's Mike Vrabel. Tennessee's got New England people upstairs in the executive building. They've got his buddy as a head coach, and they have weapons.
Weapons for days over there.
Yeah,
and a great offensive line. And it's gonna. I would love to be in those meetings because Brady's not trying to convince anybody. He's showing up saying, hey, convince me. What are you going to do for me? How are you going to allow me to control the team? How are you going to allow me to play? What's the goal? What's the plan? And it's for that reason, I'm excited to see where he's going to be at. He's still an elite player, and he's always carried a chip on his shoulder. At the age of 42, will then be in 43 into the season.
Still has it.
Still has it.
Something to prove.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one last thing with that is the thing about protecting Brady. He protects himself because there's a stat that I saw out of the ball coming out of a quarterback's hand, 2.5 seconds, he has 80% completion. The next quarterback in the history is Phillip Rivers with 74%, and then the next is Peyton Manning at 68. And so with all that said, he always protects himself because he can get the ball out quick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's another component to this, a business component. He has got his TB12 protein powders in the Whole Foods in New England. So my takeaway is, so it took him for years to get him into the Whole Foods group in New England. Would he bail on that? Because then the Whole Foods group in New England would say, well, you're not a Patriot anymore. There's a lot of business components. Like you said, he got very socially media savvy in the last 18 months. Tom is clearly the years, he's got 1 or 2 left, but Tom has another career, and he's close to hitting it beyond football. Absolutely. Okay, you've got a new book, Arcade and the Fiery Metal Tester. 3rd book. This is in your Coin Slot Chronicles series. So these are child books. You write these. You've been doing this for years. You wrote at Liberty when you were there. Did you ever imagine you'd get to this point?
You know what? It's always been a hope. But no, to be honest with you, I really didn't foresee it, and I'm humbled by it. Every single classroom I get a chance to go to and see kids light up, and the emails that I get from parents and teachers saying how much their kids run to read. Like, that's amazing for me, because I grew up with a reading comprehension deficit, and we know as adults how pivotal the success is to a human being. With the ability to read, it allows us to be creative.
Do you think that's why you started writing?
Absolutely. I'm writing for myself because I didn't find things that were fun to read. I didn't see diversity in books, and so I'm writing in touch with my 13-year-old self and saying, what would inspire me to flip the page and see what happens next.
When you had your writing deficit, go back to being 12, 13 years old, were you embarrassed? Were you mad? Were you anxious? How did it make you feel?
Absolutely. Being 13, I laugh because I see the picture of myself. I was totally embarrassed. We used to do popcorn reading. Yeah. Right in class, where you read a few sentences and then the next person reads beside you. When it got about 3 people close to me, I would raise my hand and magically have to use the bathroom. Like, I couldn't read in front of people. I was embarrassed. And then that enabled me from public speaking, a lot of other things too that followed. I was made fun of. I felt I was behind the 8 ball all the time. I was pushed through the system, yet not building the education and the foundation of it. I really had to then. That's why I went to summer school classes.
You can remember those days in class. You remember at 12 and 13 years old.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how much power that has in your life today? You took embarrassing to great.
Yeah. And through these books, the kids start to own their quirkiness. They start to own their mishaps, and they start to build on their creativity throughout the book, because you fall in love with the characters and who they are and what they mean to you. And it's a series. It's a series that's super fun, and we actually, own all the rights to it. And we've been talking and having a conversation about turning it into a cartoon for different vendors, because it's fun. It's a fun book. It's an easy read. And like I said, I gave a lot of effort into this book. I'm biased, but I think it's absolutely amazing. And I'm appreciative because, my first book made New York Times bestseller, so that opened up the door. And me as a professional athlete, I always say it's not special. Nothing special about me is the position. So I get to magnify things that I believe in, and kids usually.
I love your story.
Follow.
Your story's great. You had in your 12-year-old, 13-year-old world, you had a crisis. You were embarrassed about it, and you wanted to solve it. And I love stories like that. I love your story.
Appreciate it.
You're always welcome.
Appreciate it.
Rashad Jennings and Joy Taylor with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News, sponsored by Liberty Mutual Insurance. Only pay for what you need.
So Chargers head coach Anthony Lynn spoke publicly for the first time since the team parted ways with Phillip Rivers.
Oh, he did? What did he say?
They still have Tyrod Taylor under contract, and Lynn thinks he has the potential to take a step up this year.
Tyrod Taylor, he's a heck of a quarterback. We couldn't have a better backup right now. And now he has an opportunity to maybe step into a starting role. And I've had Tyrod before, and I know what this young man brings to the table in the passing game and the running game.
Well, he's a top 5 backup in the league, no question.
They are in a good situation. You remember what he did in Buffalo?
No, Tyrod is I'm not building around him, but you can win games with Tyrod Taylor.
No, but I do like if they do end up getting Tua, I love Tyrod being there with Tua.
He's grown
now,
up.
unfortunately for Tyrod, he's kind of in the same situation as he was in before with Baker. But I just think Tyrod's such a pro and such a reliable.
That's it. Your words exactly. He's a pro.
He's a pro. He's completely reliable. He's someone, like you said, you're not going to build your franchise around him. But if you need a quarterback for this year or for the next 2 years until you figure out what you want to do, Tyrod's your guy. He's going to go out there and win games. They have a lot of weapons, so they made the wild card round with the Bills.
And he also, what Tyrod Taylor doesn't do is make mistakes.
Right.
So this again, the Chargers have enough talent. Sometimes Phillip Rivers could make the play, but there was a Jameis Winston quality to Phillip, which is, oh my God. Tyrod does it. Tyrod doesn't have the arm. He knows it. So he's very Teddy Bridgewater. He's very Alex Smith.
Yes.
I'm efficient. I'm an athletic. I can move a little, but I play within what I am. So the ceiling's a little lower, but Tyrod doesn't lose games for you.
And he's reliable and consistent, professional. If you get someone like Tua in there, say Tua's maybe not 100% by the time the season comes around, you're in a perfect situation if you're the Chargers or any rookie quarterback for that matter, if that's the direction that they choose to go in. So the Redskins are releasing veteran cornerback Josh Norman after 4 years with the team. Norman said that Ron Rivera called him this morning to break the news. While it wasn't his decision to leave Washington, he said he is ready to start something new and fresh. He was due $12.5 million in 2020, which was likely what led to
that's a lot
that split.
Yeah.
He's going into his 9th season. Still playing at a high level, so he's going to end up somewhere. Just obviously not going to be at that number. He had 40 total tackles.
He's still a playmaker.
1 sack, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception.
He's a playmaking corner. He's not just a corner. Josh still makes plays.
Right. Now, he was benched at the end of the season. He played in only 2 of the final 6 games, 10 total snaps. But I think this is a good situation for Ron Rivera. Obviously, he was with him for years in Carolina. But Ron Rivera is clearly trying to establish what he wants there, clear some space, bring in some young talent. And for Josh Norman, he's going to end up somewhere. Like, that's no question about that. But the only thing that confuses me about Washington still is Dwayne Haskins.
Oh, I think they're going to give him a whole year. I think they're going to give Dwayne Haskins. I think they're going to go draft Chase Young. I could be nuts on this. I think teams would move up for Chase Young. Now, Chase is probably too good to move down on, but I think you draft Chase Young and you just say, we're going to get a little younger, a little leaner. We're going to let go of some Josh Normans, and you give Dwayne 16 games, and if you see marked improvement week 1 to week 12, then you keep him. I think this is Dwayne Haskins all in. I think Alex Smith is going to retire pretty soon, actually.
They don't really have they don't have a timer on them this year. There's no heat on them this year to do anything except for take small steps of improvements and allow Rivera to come in and establish whatever culture he's going to put in Washington.
Alex Smith, I believe, is going to retire and transition to the front offices in the NFL. Alex is the perfect guy to have in the building.
Of course.
He's like Tyrod Taylor. Perfect guy to have in the building over Dwayne. Dwayne, this is what you got to do.
I mean, you saw what he did for Patrick Mahomes, which obviously no one is comparing Patrick Mahomes to Dwayne Haskins. Yeah. But Patrick has said many times, being able to see how Alex Smith prepares, what he does as a professional, helps him tremendously in his career. Finally, Ben Roethlisberger is still rehabbing his elbow after suffering a season-ending injury last September. And Steelers GM Kevin Colbert is very optimistic about Big Ben's future. He said, all signs are good. We are hopeful that he can make a complete recovery. We don't think he's at the end of the road.
Okay.
Well,
all right.
I mean, there's really nothing else to say because he's making $34 million this season. Yeah. So he's going to be out there one way or the other.
Last time he started, he threw for 4,500 yards. I mean, his last year, he may have thrown for 5,000 yards.
Well, he's going into his 17th season.
Yeah, I mean, he's old. This is one of these. Let me watch him play.
I mean, there's no other option. Like I said, he's getting towards $34 million this year. So we're going to be watching Ben Roethlisberger with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, Ben's been talking about, retiring, and then he's not retiring over the past couple years. And obviously that was kind of due to some frustrations with, whatever was going on in Pittsburgh, which, who knows at this point. But he's going to be 38 in March. But Big Ben is not Tom Brady. Like, we're not comparing the body situations there in any way. And Big Ben takes big hits because he's a big guy. But I do think that this is more reflective of what the AFC North is going to be next season, because it's just not going to look the way that it did last season. And that's it. The Steelers hung in there, like had an unbelievable season despite being completely.
They were down to a guy named Duck Hodges.
Yes, insane at the quarterback position. So.
Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Our third hour, we're radio only, so we're going to bring Jason McIntyre up. One of my favorite segments. We run it on Fridays in the last hour. We're going to move it up. I love it. It's called Tomorrow's Headlines Today with Jason McIntyre. He gives you the big headlines of the weekend. What do you think the newspapers will be blaring in the blogs on Monday? That's coming up. American Financing is a family-owned mortgage banker that's been helping people for 2 decades. These guys are the real deal, saving customers up to $1,000 a month, sometimes more. Just one 10-minute phone call gets you pre-qualified. Never any upfront fees, unlike some lenders who charge $500 to pre-qualify. American Financing offers the lowest rates, fastest closing. Take advantage of a free mortgage review. Interest rates now so low, you could add hundreds of dollars back to your monthly budget by simply refinancing. When you choose American Financing, you don't have to reset your loan. You choose the term you need. It's your mortgage on your terms. Not every lender can do that, but American Financing can. Check them out at their website, americanfinancing.net, or call 866-615-9200. American Financing.